Hi, everyone. Welcome to this panel on the technical road ahead. My name is Pili, and I'm the engineering manager at the Zcash Foundation, and I'll be chairing this panel today. Before we start, I just want to share a few organizational items. This session is 1.5 hours long. We will take a 5-minute break around halfway through. I'll be taking questions from the audience throughout, so please send those in through the Hoover app as you watch the panel, and we'll do our best to answer them as we go. And if you are watching this after the fact, please still send your questions in, still through Hoover, and the panelists and I will do our best to answer them through the week. So without further ado, I will ask each of the panelists to briefly introduce themselves. And I have asked them as a bit of an icebreaker to tell us which achievement they are most proud of from the past year. And I will start with John.
Hi, everybody. Very happy to be here. So I'm John. I'm a CEO and co-founder at QEDIT. We work on the Zcash shielded assets presently and in the future, a lot ahead. Something I'm pretty proud of that happened is quite a smooth move from zcashd to Zebra as far as ZSAs are concerned. And in that move, an increased collaboration with ECC and with ZF. So we got to work a lot together, and that's a cool achievement.
Great. Thank you, John. Chris, do you want to go next?
Hi there. I'm Chris Nuttycombe. I'm a software engineer at the Electric Coin Company. As far as the proudest achievement of the past year, I think that everything leading up to the Zashi launch, we've done a tremendous amount of work on wallet backends, and both some interesting technical work there, and then just a lot of building a good foundation for the future.
Thank you, Chris. Dara Emma, would you like to go next?
Yes, I'm Dara Emma Hopwood. I'm the R&D engineering manager for Electric Coin Company. Let's see, it's not actually Zcash related, my proudest thing from the last year. I helped to organize a Trans Pride in Manchester. It was the first Trans Pride there, and it had about 3,000 participants as far as we counted on the march. And it was spectacularly successful. And actually, I think the confidence that I got from sort of taking a management kind of organizing role in that helped me become engineering manager.
That's great. Thank you, Dara. Conrado, would you like to go next?
Sure. Thank you, Pili. I'm Conrado. I'm a cryptography engineer at the Zcash Foundation. And the achievement I'm most proud of from last year, I think, was along with the Frost team, getting the Frost crates or implementation of the Frost protocol to release the stable release, the 1.0.0 stable release after going to the audit and improvements and API improvements and so on, and getting finally the stable release out. Yes.
That's great. Thank you, Conrado. And last but not least, Arya, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Arya. I am a developer on the Zebra team at the Zcash Foundation, and an achievement I'm proud of in the last year was work on the Zebra launcher, which makes it easier to install and run Zebra.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you all for joining me today for this panel. When I was thinking about how to structure this panel, I thought it would be quite nice to start off with the things that we are quite certain about, that we know are in the short-term horizon. So I would like to ask each of you, what do you see in the next, let's say in the NU6 timeframe? I know it might be controversial, but let's see what we each can come up with. Chris, do you want to start us off on this one?
Okay, well, nothing is yet set in stone for what's going to go into NU6, and that's a subject that we're currently in discussion with the community to figure out. The thing that I'm perhaps most interested in is something that we didn't get into NU5, which is a somewhat minor, but potentially significant change to how we handle memos in the Zcash protocol. We've had this idea for a while that the memos in Zcash transactions should be decoupled from the actual economic outputs, such that you could have multiple outputs refer to the same memo, or a single output refer to a longer memo, or a memo with multiple parts. And so that's something that we've been looking at, sketching out recently, that I would like to see in NU6, if we can get it to happen in the NU6 timeframe. The other thing I'm really interested in is what will be the next iteration of or replacement of the dev fund. I'm generally pretty interested in economic system design, and there's a lot of interesting space there that we pretty rapidly need to figure out what some good options are.
Great, thank you, Chris. Does anyone want to speak to any of Chris's points, or maybe put forward their own views on NU6?
I'm also excited about the memo changes, because if we get them in, then they'll potentially enable a lot of other applications. I'd like to put a word in for one of my favorite. It's almost a tiny feature. It seems trivial, but making the transaction fee explicit. So in NU6, we plan for that to be an explicit field, rather than being sort of defined by all of the inputs to the transaction that you didn't spend. And that frankly was a design mistake in Bitcoin, and it has led some people to lose a lot of money. Yeah, it's a nice cleanup, and it improves security, makes the protocol easier to reason about. I like that.
Yeah, I think, given our experience building wallet backends, the fact that transactions don't explicitly commit to the fees is it's both a risk to users, because if fees are implicit in something that the users don't really have great control over, then there's loss of funds potential, and we've seen that in Bitcoin over years. It's a risk or it has been a risk in Zcash, but it's also, just from a software development perspective, it's a huge hassle to essentially have to have all of the transparent history of the chain available in order for you to be able to figure out what the fee was for a transaction. That's something that made sense in the context of full nodes, but it really doesn't make any sense in the context of light clients, and just making it explicit in the transaction format will be a significant upgrade.
Yeah, every time we trip over that, it's terrible.
It's also very useful for ZSAs, right? Because if you're paying fees in ZEC, but the actual transaction is denominated in something else, then there's nothing implicit about it. You need to be explicit on how much ZEC is going to be collected, right? So it also made the design of ZSA fees a little bit easier. ZSA fees hasn't been solved yet. There's an open question on what is the most appropriate way to approach it, but it goes through these changes. And I actually wanted to add on the memo field part, the fact that that's changing and becoming more flexible is also sort of small innovation, but that opens up a lot. If we're thinking of being more robust with the interaction with exchanges, when they need to add things into transactions, the user needs to identify or put elements attached to the transactions to facilitate the interaction with exchanges. Then the fact that these memo fields are flexible, we have a bigger design space to use and solve problems in a more elegant way. Very cool advances there.
John, Sorry, go on.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, since we have a question from the audience, and it's since you're speaking as a relatively recent joiner to the community, we are asked, how can we improve collaboration across the Zcash ecosystem? So I think it would be interesting for you to bring in your point, and looking forward, the theme of the conference is Zcash Unified. So as a newcomer, what have you seen around collaboration, and how do you think we can improve it across the ecosystem?
I must say that I've been following Zcash since 2013, when Zerocash was discussed. I first heard about zero knowledge proof from Eli Ben Sasson at San Jose conference, explaining the concept of what could you do to augment Bitcoin with concrete privacy. But it's true that we are much more involved in the past few years, and I would say that for people that want to participate and to join, ask yourself if you value things well done, meaning looking at a design and figuring out if it was well thought, if the edge cases were discussed, if there's a strong emphasis in this community on quality of code and quality of design, because there's a lot of responsibility on people dealing with this. So it's a very attractive community for people that are not half-assing, to reach for something out there, but want to really iterate and until they reach something strong and concrete. If that sounds like a description of you as a developer, by the way, I'm pointing at me, but that's the developers of the QEDIT team. I'm not writing code for the Zcash code base.
Yeah, I'm a perfectionist as well.
Yeah, I was looking at you.
Great.
Yeah, it's my autistic ADHD brain.
But I think the responsibility is felt strongly on everybody, because we've seen in the past, what if things break, what could happen, and we really want to try to avoid breaking stuff.
Any other thoughts on collaboration from anyone else? Okay.
I mean,
yeah.
So I guess this will depend to some extent on how the funding model works out, because it'll depend how open the grants are to new participants, how much bureaucracy there is around them, but whether they will work well for people not from the US, things like that.
So that leads me very well onto the next question. Thank you, Dariema, which is, do you think, and this is to everyone, and it's, do you think Zcash would benefit from an independent Zcash core engineering team? I'm going to call on Arya first, because he hasn't spoken yet. Sorry to put you on the spot, Arya, but any thoughts?
That's okay. I don't know. I think it would be better if we all collaborated a little bit more closely on the core crates that are used for Zcash. I don't think it would benefit from an independent team just working on that.
Thank you, Arya. Dariema, I think you had some thoughts.
I mean, the knowledge of the protocol is in all of our brains in ECC and ZF, and we need to make sure that that yes, it's all written down and other people can come in and contribute. But yeah, anything that would sort of risk losing a large chunk of that that expertise is an issue, in my opinion.
I think I'm not entirely certain what if the question is should the development efforts of ZF and ECC be unified. So there are a lot of moving pieces to the parts in the Zcash ecosystem, and we all have our sort of individual specializations. I think that the one thing that I am most concerned about, like I don't actually care whether we work for the same organization or multiple organizations. I want us to be, well coordinated, and I want, the thing that I'm a little bit nervous about for, the way that's termed an independent Zcash core engineering team is just that I want to make sure that engineers continue to be free to do engineering and don't have to have our time sucked away by things related to, overhead of, the management pieces. There's a lot that the existing organizations do for us as engineers to sort of free up our time to spend as much time as we can working on protocols and code, and that's extremely valuable.
And not to put too fine a point on it, are we going to be paid enough? Because we're highly qualified cryptographic engineers. We can walk into another job that pays more tomorrow. So it's just a reality. We have to be paid in a competitive amount. And the funding will need to take that into account. It's kind of socially awkward to talk about your own compensation, but I think it needs to be talked about.
Definitely. If we don't have any more thoughts on this, I would like to jump on to another topic, but I'll give a few seconds for anyone else to respond on this.
About the, I don't know what is meant by, the Zcash core team. Like when you say independent organization, I'm immediately thinking like Chris, that's more overhead, and just the thought of going through finding a new equilibrium for this type of organization and rethinking funding is sounds like a headache. But I don't think it's awkward to talk about compensating people that really work hard on moving things forward. I think it feels maybe a bit, but I think it's an accepted principle in every other ecosystem as well. I think the particularity here is that the set of skills that's required to really make a progress is so niche, and basically the tools were created specifically for Zcash.
And by Zcashers in a lot of cases.
Yeah, so that's it's really hard to to come by and to replace. So that's a huge potential barrier to jump. If there's anything nicer on the other side, we don't know, but that's not so easy.
Okay, I'm going to jump on to the next question. This is specifically for Darem and Chris. And the question is, do you think the memo field changes are a higher priority than deprecating zcashd, which is a prerequisite for deploying ZSAs?
Oh, that's a simple answer. No.
I agree. It's not higher priority. The reason that we've talked about the memo changes and the fee changes, or the fee field changes in transaction format, is that these are efforts that the question of when to do these things is kind of about how much goes into NU6. If hypothetically the decision related to the dev fund is that the dev fund should simply expire at the next halving, then that means that there is not a pressure to get NU6 out on that time frame. The amount of stuff that we can get into NU6 at this point is relatively limited because of the time frames of node deprecation. Because essentially, everything that goes into an NU6 that would activate with the next halving has to be feature complete and tested and ready for deployment in the next couple of months. The memo field changes and the fee changes were the feature upgrades that we were able to think of that are small enough to fit into that window. So it's not about whether they're more important. It's about if we are deploying a network upgrade for the halving, what other features could we get into that network upgrade? But we are absolutely, we want to be done with the migration off of zcashd as quickly as we can. There's just a lot of work to do there, and that work is specifically not coupled to the network upgrade because it's mostly related to providing replacement functionality for the zcashd wallet.
So yes, that's part of the argument that we used for, or that I originally argued for a more minimal NU6. I think at this stage in the network upgrade process, there would be sort of some cost to kind of rethink things and have try and put more into the upgrade than was originally planned, because we know that the amount of work in the features that have already been proposed for NU6 is a coherent size for a network upgrade, and if, for example, we were to try to merge those features and ZSAs in the same upgrade, I objectively don't think that's the best choice for protocol design. I like us to bite things off in sort of smaller chunks than that.
So there's actually something really interesting here. Because of the timing of NU6 being so close, it's a great motivator to concentrate efforts and move faster. From our perspective at QEDIT developing ZSAs, we had NU6 in mind originally, and knowing that on the path of NU6 with ZSAs, there would be for sure zcashd deprecation and Zebra being fully featured. We've actually thought internally, how can we try to push that and help get more resources and more work on pushing Zebra along with the rest of the ecosystem. So it has even if NU6 doesn't in the end merge the proposed ZSAs, it does give us an accelerator and a reason to all combine our efforts and try to get past this zcashd deprecation hurdle. So we're actually proposing that to the community to actually help push Zebra, and we're lucky enough that we don't have the responsibility and the burden of choosing what goes into deployment, and we do provide the branches and the software, and we kindly ask for it to be merged so that our work was not in vain. But but there is a sort of hidden cost that goes there. If we do the work and it's not merged soon, then we know that we will need to do some more work to catch up to whatever advances in main Zcash. So we do have as engineering efforts, we have an interest to have that code being taken care of as mainstream Zcash as fast as possible. So as far as QEDIT is concerned, we don't know what's the right decision for the protocol, but we act from the point of view of NU6 was our target. NU6 is where we try to bring a fully working version of ZSAs. It requires test nets, and it requires auditing and other things. Probably we'll talk about them later. But that's it's a great target to have.
Thank you, John. I would like to move the conversation slightly towards NU7, but is there anything else that anyone wants to discuss on NU6 and other potential quick wins that we might want to add in there? Okay, I see Darema wants to share something. Darema, you're muted.
Oh, there we go. Can you see that? So you can see that there's a reasonably large amount of work to do in order to deprecate zcashd, and it's good that this is a fairly sort of shallow graph, but there's each of these things needs to be expanded into more tasks, and I think that sort of the timescale of being able to deprecate zcashd that's shown in our roadmap is quite realistic, and so I'm not sure that sort of rearranging the network upgrades in order to try and sort of compress the critical path. I'm not sure that there's actually that much time that can be saved there.
Yeah, I mean, again, the question is really, in terms of what goes into NU6, is NU6 going to activate with a halving, right? Yeah. If NU6 is not going to activate with a halving, then the primary question we have is sort of engineering complexity. I'm not concerned about the explicit fee changes. Those can go into any upgrade. The memo changes they're small enough that they could fit alongside something else. I'd be hesitant to want to include them and ZSAs in the same upgrade. I think that if it was the case that that we wanted to push ZSAs as far forward as possible, we should probably push the memo changes back. But if there is an NU6 upgrade with the halving, then I think that we should get the memo changes into it. It's really very much about what can we get in with the halving. The other thing that I see is required for ZSA activation is really wallet support. If we have too many times in the past deployed functionality to the chain, but without the wallet support being there, and if ZSAs arrive but without support for wallets to transact with them, without support for issuance, without all of the necessary infrastructure that surrounds them, they both will be inadequately tested. I mean, we need to be able to interact with ZSAs on testnet as they will be interacted with on mainnet, and they will just not be. They won't make a splash at all if we say, oh, the protocol has this feature, but I'm sorry, it's going to be months before you can use it. So I think that ZSA, like activating ZSAs on mainnet without having things all the way through to user interfaces will limit their impact, honestly.
Yeah. So slight sort of nuance there. I don't think it's necessary to have a polished graphical wallet that supports ZSAs to block the activation on that. It is necessary to have that support in Zcash, so to be able to test using a wallet, which could be command line or whatever. And yeah, I couldn't agree more about the need to have that support so along with the activation and before, because we need to test it and test now.
There's another important piece here is that if ZSA is a short-term thing and we try to somehow squeeze it into NU6, which we're attempting, the implication is that you have the ability to issue assets with what I call vanilla ZSA, meaning anyone paying enough fees will be able to issue assets and then move them around. We already are hearing, background noise from other projects on what does it mean to have total freedom to issue any asset with full anonymity in a fully decentralized way, and putting those features out is a huge gain in capability, but it's also it carries with it more scrutiny from outside, and so if we know how, or if we have a plan how to deal with this outside scrutiny without impacting the rest of the ecosystem, or just focusing on having ZSA make that splash, but at the same time not put at risk the whole Zcash project, then those features like those memo advances, they actually become very useful to have before ZSA, because if this is something that exchanges would use to have ZSAs a little bit more easy to interact with, then yeah, having those memos more flexible is a feature that we will use for ZSAs with capabilities of interacting with. So I know we can't say compliance, but like interaction with other with actors that are usually they need to be compliant.
I mean, so, memos were always designed to enable people to conform with the travel rule if they wanted to. And actually, the 512 byte length was chosen with that in mind. And yeah, it certainly would be an improvement to have for that kind of usage to have an arbitrary length. But on the other hand, we haven't really seen people use memos for travel rule compliance up to now, as far as I know. So it's unclear whether that's sufficient.
Well, I think that's partly due to, there's a lot of history there. Given that it has been very easy for a lot of centralized exchanges to only interact with the transparent part of the protocol, I think there just hasn't been a lot of motivation for them to take advantage of the capabilities that are offered by the memo functionality and the shielded functionality in general. So, and that's that's just part of Zcash's history, is, you know, in forking from Bitcoin's code base and having a transparent pool. We made it easy, but it was a trade-off.
Yeah, in some ways, the biggest competitor to Zcash's shielded protocol is Zcash's transparent protocol.
Yeah, and we never wanted to have any Zcash transparent assets. That was not in the proposal.
Yeah, and that's the right decision. I've always said so. I guess we moved on to NU7 implicitly there.
Which is great. So I think we have about 10 more minutes before the break. So we can wrap up on NU7 in the next 10 minutes. And then after the break, I would like to do a bit more long-term thinking and see what we would love to see in the next 5 to 10 and indeed 25 plus years. But does anyone have any other wish list items they would like for NU7? Arya, go ahead.
I would really love detection keys for NU7 because it helps solve a scalability issue for mobile clients, especially where you don't have to download the entire chain in order to see what notes you can spend anymore. So I think that would be really good for Zcash.
Yeah.
What would it take for that? Sorry, Dara, Emma.
So we've always really known how to do detection keys. You basically use double encryption. That's the most obvious way to do it. There are more sophisticated ways to do it using private information retrieval and stuff. But I think it would probably be sufficient just to do the double encryption thing. And the idea there is that you give the holder of the outer encryption key the ability to detect notes, but not to decrypt them fully.
Yeah, I think that, you know, I think that whatever network upgrade activates ZSAs, we should put as little else into that network upgrade as possible.
Yep. Yeah, you nerd sniped me there. What I was actually going to say was to start with was what Chris has just said. We should only do ZSAs in NU7.
I mean, so I don't have any objection to doing more frequent network upgrades. I think that frequent network upgrades are good. And, you know, more frequent and smaller is how we really should do them. You know, looking in retrospect, things like zip244, the change to the signature hash algorithm, should not have been a part of NU5. That should have been an earlier release, or, you know, NU5 should have been just that, and maybe we could have gotten in the explicit fees into a release then, and then had Orchard be just Orchard in whatever network upgrade followed. And so you know, while I'd be happy for sort of development to proceed on things like detection keys, it should be done in such a way that that the network upgrade doesn't become tied to them. And that we should just do, you know, we should do, if we can, we should do one thing at a time, right? Network upgrades are not, you know, version numbers are easy. Like interactions of features are hard.
Yes. Yeah, I think once we'd got into the rut of doing huge upgrades, and Sapling was the first one of those. So NU0 over winter was a nice, clean, sort of tightly scoped upgrade. Well, actually, that did make a hash algorithm change as well. So it was originally a nice, clean, tightly scoped upgrade that was just proving out the ability to do upgrades. And then we added the change to the hash algorithm. and that was when the rot started. It's easy to look back and sort of try and design the optimal network upgrade schedule, which, yeah, that was very constrained by having found the BC314 bug. But yeah, it's not controversial among any of us that we should be doing smaller upgrades.
Romaro, you want to?
Yeah, I agree that doing one thing at a time makes a lot of sense and seems like the best approach. But one thing we need to be careful about is, I think, changing the transaction format, which often I think will happen in NU7 probably. I'm not sure, maybe NU6 too. But it's a pain for everyone, for all the developers.
It makes sense to batch changes that are going to change the format, which is what we're doing in NU6, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and just to expand on that a little bit, I think that if we do a transaction format change of whatever sort for NU6, that we probably should try to do as many of the transaction format change pieces as we can there. So if the ZSA transaction format changes are sufficiently advanced, we can make that transaction format change in such a way that it essentially all of the parsing logic and whatnot can be implemented without necessarily turning on the new consensus rules, aside from that transactions must parse correctly. So in terms of batching transaction format changes, I absolutely agree. That's a good point, Conrado.
I'm a little bit skeptical because of the timing, and because if you get it wrong, if you actually do need another update, then it's kind of awkward that you. Yeah, I guess it's not actually that bad if you make a mistake and have to change it because it will have been switched off in the meantime. So maybe I'm over-egging that problem.
Yeah, and also, I mean, if your choices are, we can do one transaction format update, and then only if we get it wrong do we do a second, or we have to do two transaction format updates, then we might as well try to do them in one.
Yeah, and that I basically thought of that argument halfway through what I was saying and changed my mind.
Yeah, I like what you guys are talking about. We're gonna be testing all of this on our little test net, so we'll see if those formats coexist nicely and are backward compatible, and we'll try to test as much as we can the interaction of features. But then turn it off, turn it on, whatever is decided. It would be great if that now is part of the part of the things that we don't need to chase.
Thank you. I think this is a good point to take a break. So we'll be back in about 5 minutes at let's say 10 to the hour with a look at the medium to long term for the Zcash technical road ahead. See you all in a few minutes. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. So we were just talking about NU6 and NU7 and the short-term technical roadmap for Zcash. And I would like to start off talking about the medium term with a question that's come in from the audience, which is what capabilities does Zcash need to incorporate to be relevant and cutting edge in the zero-knowledge proof space? This is given the potential competitors such as Aleo, Namada, Penumbra, DarkFi, etc. Who wants to go first? Maybe John?
Yeah, all of these are amazing projects, but they're not Zcash. I mean, this is the ecosystem that's been around for the longest, and I think there's something to say on spending so much time with so much at stake and managing all these nitty upgrades very carefully. This is a place that is maybe taking this to very far, but it's also the biggest value. You know that the privacy of the users here is extremely valued and respected, and it's not trying to get points for speed versus privacy or speed versus it's always privacy is there. I know that it's at the heart of many of those projects as well, but this is like a place where this is demonstrated. The other thing is that all of us are interacting with all of these ecosystems all the time. Like when they have smart ideas, we will steal them without thinking twice and without blinking at all. There's no monopoly on smart.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because I was going to talk about speed. And I want it to be clear that privacy is absolutely non-negotiable. We're not trading off speed for privacy, but speed does matter. So latency of transactions. When you get a payment, how soon is it before you can spend that? How soon is it before you get a notification? How soon before you get a confirmed balance? They're all very important. And there are chains that sort of do it much faster than ours. I don't really think you need it to be just a few seconds. Maybe you do for some use cases, but it's, yeah, 20 seconds would probably be fine. But we can't do 20 seconds at the moment. And it's not going to be a short-term thing, but we need to to do the work to figure out how we would get to that in Zcash, because our competitors are not going to be standing still. I don't think there has to be any compromise in privacy with for low latency.
Thank you, Darima. Does anyone else have any other points on this? Okay, let's go to another question from the audience, which is, what about exchange addresses? I'm not quite sure what that means, but maybe someone else does.
Yeah, so I think that what they're referring to is the recent ZIP 320 transparent exchange addresses. This was actually something that was suggested by Han on the forum in response to a need from Binance. Binance basically wants to enforce a rule that transactions sent to them do not originate directly from the shielded pool. And so without changing the protocol, the idea there was pretty straightforward, that a new address format be created that existing wallets wouldn't recognize, and where wallets that upgrade to use this format then know that they should only spend transparent funds in the creation of those outputs. So it's not really a protocol level upgrade, and it's something that is essentially in support of a relatively narrow use case. My personal opinion is that use case could have been better served by something like shielded payment disclosures or authenticated source addresses, which are one of the reasons that we want to add the extended memo format, because in order to do a sort of authenticated reply to, we need extra space in the transaction format for doing those authentication proofs for Orchard. But the time frame was prohibitive there.
So I don't know whether the question about transparent exchange addresses was in response to the discussion about privacy. If it was, then we made very sure to analyze it and to ensure that there was no loss of privacy beyond just what you would already be doing by using the transparent protocol at all with text addresses. So the behavior that is specified in ZIP 320 is if you want to send from your shielded funds to a text address, then you will shield it. You will deshield them to a temporary address, so that has not been used before, and it's completely unlinkable with anything else, and then you will send from that temporary address to the text address. And for me personally, that was basically a condition on me sort of supporting and being prepared to work on the feature, because I'm not here to create weaknesses in the protocol.
Thank you, Darima. Maybe changing gears a bit. I'm very curious about what Conrado thinks about the medium-term improvements. I know he and the rest of us at the foundation would love to see Frost getting adopted into Zcash, and I don't know if he wants to say something about that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's kind of hard to fit Frost into the discussion because it's not related to a network upgrade, and this is good. This is something, it's like a good thing about Frost is that it doesn't require change the protocol. You can use it right now if you want to. Of course, we need the toolings, the wallet support, but it's technically possible to use Frost now. So I think for the medium term, is getting deployed, right? Is getting to Frost into wallets, and we're doing some work to help that happen. We've been working on some demo code and on a server code, and on a server. And the purpose of the server is to make it easier for participants to talk to each other, because it's something that Frost needs, right? And this is something that wallets don't. Not usually, they never do. Like, the wallets don't talk to each other. Like, the wallets just interact with the lightwalletd server or the blockchain. So this is something that will be new to them, and this server would help because people are behind firewalls, NATs, stuff like that, and it's hard for them to connect to each other. So we are working on this relatively simple server that just carries messages back and forth between participants. And that should help getting Frost deployed initially. I think a bit longer than that would be good to have some peer-to-peer communication mechanisms to make that happen. But I think a good start is to use this server, which could be deployed alongside or in addition to lightwalletd servers that wallets could connect to. But yeah, I think these are the biggest challenge in getting the Frost deployed. There's a zip that's been reviewed, but it's kind of just has been mostly textual changes to make it clear. But the technical content of the zip, I think it's ready. So we know how to use Frost with Zcash. We need to make it happen by, in my opinion, the first step, integrated with wallets. Yes.
Do you know how Bitcoin multisig tends to be implemented? Because I know, so it's a fewer round protocol because the signatures can be made independently. Does that in practice make it simpler, or?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that's a good point. I'm not super familiar with how people do multisig on Bitcoin. Yeah, since each person produces their own signature, unlike Frost, right? I guess the flow there is a bit simpler. Yeah.
I think one of the big questions with bringing Frost in is usability, and I think in general this is something that we need to think about in Zcash. So I would kind of like to open this question up as, are there any technical improvements we can make to the protocol that can make it more usable? Does anyone want to jump in on this one?
I mean, I think at this point, making any change to the protocol would make it less usable, because what we really need to do is just implement the existing protocol.
I think there was a question of how fast can we get the different exchanges that are using zcashd today to switch to a Zebra node, and so the usability of those very special users is kind of taking a priority, because if we unlock this type of usability, then we at once bring much more speed of development, with Zebra being dropping the old code, and so I think there's a special attention to those users. We might get there faster than we think, right? If we manage to have drop-in replacements and have the Zebra interface mimic very closely what they're used to and what they've already integrated, we could catch up and have them switch to Zebra faster. But that's I think that's a special class of users that we really need to attend.
I'm going to jump in there because I think that's a very interesting one, where maybe what we would implement in Zebra is not necessarily the most usable thing, but it's because I think we could do things that are more modern and more usable, that are not just a drop-in replacement of what zcashd does. And that's kind of a bit the challenge, thinking about, do we do this thing that we know is kind of not the best way to do it, but maybe will be quicker for exchanges that don't want to make any changes on their end? Or do we actually do things properly? Chris?
Yeah, I was going to say, there's definitely a trade-off there, where if we go the route of trying to make a drop-in replacement, we're going to be making engineering choices that are going to continue to frankly haunt us going forward. I mean, this is one of the problems with the zcashd wallet as it exists, is that there are one of the things that makes it hard to move off of is having done that again and again and again in the past. I would prefer that we try to work more towards the future, and then really provide the high quality support that customers like exchanges need to integrate with an improved API, rather than compromise our future at the cost, for the convenience of the present.
Yeah. So to me, there are two categories of things wrong with zcashd. There's implementation problems and there's design problems. And the design of the RPC API, especially the wallet RPC API, is awful. It is part of the motivation of getting rid of zcashd, the design of that API, not just the how it's implemented. And Yeah, I think that's what I wanted to say. Carry on.
Also, bug for bug compatibility is
Yeah.
horrible to try to achieve in the first place. It's costly.
We tried to simplify the API by removing what are they called, labels, or there's some parameter in the API that has to be an empty string, because we thought that was the unnecessary complexity, and it was, and it's still too complicated.
Arya?
We could do both to some extent. We could support as close to zcashd as possible, and also allow for configuring Zebra so that it works with a new API that's designed the way we think it should be.
I think they're
true, but the sorry, you first, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, so writing two things, sure, that's absolutely possible, but it's expensive, especially if you want that drop-in functionality to be, for example, if you want the key trees to continue to behave in the way that the key trees have behaved in zcashd, there's a lot of engineering effort that has to go into that. It is not a straightforward thing, because we have maintained the semantics of so. In the Zcash wallet, there is a concept of separate pools of funds, and what pool of funds a given address belongs to is actually a factor of when that API was added in Zcash's history. So in the original Bitcoin wallet, there was a single pool of funds for all transparent addresses, which were derived from system randomness. Then with the addition of Sprout and Sapling, Sprout had a separate pool of funds for each address. Sapling had a separate pool of funds for each address. We finally implemented diversified addresses and zip32 account functionality in NU5. But I mean, it makes wallet recovery a colossal hassle to have to deal with all of those different conceptual pools that may overlap in terms of the key tree. So,
and it's not clear that anyone is even actually depending on that. We have, yeah, if we want a compatible interface, then we would have to re-implement it. But does anyone depend on it? It seems that sort of exchanges who want this sort of RPC compatible interface are mainly talking about transparent functionality, and so re-implementing all of the complexity of how shielded pools of funds work is unnecessary to achieve the goal.
It's not even shielded pools of funds, though. It's transparent pools of funds.
Yes, you're right. Yeah,
and the way that it conflicts with our approach to shielded pools of funds. So it's really, this is the opportunity to cut away all of that rot. They were engineering changes that made sense at the time, but they do not make sense today.
I'm not even sure they made sense at the time.
Great. I have a question. I think now is a good time to answer it. It's kind of not related to what we've been talking about, but it's the question is explicit transaction fee on the blockchain won't solve the light wallet problem for historical transactions. Can we add the fee to the lightwalletd gRPC protocol, since the server has this information available for all transactions already?
Yeah, I can respond to that. Yes, we should add it to the lightwallet protocol. That won't solve the problems that we really want to solve. One significant problem that committing to explicit fees in the transaction format allows us to fix is interaction with hardware wallets. Right now, there's not a good way for hardware wallets to display the fee separately and or commit to it in a separated fashion, and that's something that it was really a mistake for us not to fix this at the same time as we made the transaction format changes in ZIP 244. It was an oversight, but that means we shouldn't stop from fixing it now. And in terms of transaction size, it adds an additional 4 bytes to each transaction. I don't think that that's material in terms of, when we have kilobytes of data in the proofs. So, and we are planning with memo changes to make it possible to save a fair amount of space per transaction. So that will also help.
Thank you, Chris. I want to ask a question to whoever wants to answer it. Does anyone have any pet projects that they would like for Zcash to be implemented in the next, let's say, 5 to 10 years?
Post-quantum privacy.
That's a hell of a pet project.
I mean, I don't know whether it fits the sort of intended definition of a pet project, but it's important because if quantum computers do work out, then yeah, public key cryptography, as we have known it, is broken. And there are sort of post-quantum algorithms that we could move to, but we need to start doing the design work on that. I was recently at HAX, the High Assurance Crypto Software Conference, and Real World PQC and Real World Crypto, and this was sort of the topic of conversation. Everyone was talking about the post-quantum transition. So it's happening. There was we had a bit of a scare when there was a paper that looked as though it was sort of almost breaking lattice algorithms. That paper turned out to be flawed, but it has demonstrated that we actually need hybrid algorithms. We need to combine the new post-quantum stuff with elliptic curves, which is probably what we would have done anyway in Zcash. But it's important because even if you're skeptical about the feasibility of quantum computers, there are harvest now, decrypt later attacks. So in our case, we have a public blockchain and all of the ciphertext is on the blockchain. But even if it wasn't, an adversary can collect the ciphertext, then if and when they do have a quantum computer, they can decrypt it. And that's a privacy problem. And we need to solve it. And if it turns out that quantum computers never work, that's okay. We've increased the complexity of the protocol a little bit. We've applied the precautionary principle, and the protocol will still work. It'll still be reasonably efficient. It'll be a little more bandwidth intensive, but that's all.
Thank you, Darima. Anyone want to share any other pet projects or like what they would like to see? I think John wants to say something.
Yeah, I really like what's going on in. I gave a demo about it at some point in our calls, on Thursdays. The ZK login, ZK send, and those payment links. I think in Zcash it's called liberated payments. But basically, it's the ability to kind of log in with your Gmail and have that as your way of having an identity on a blockchain and receiving funds. And then when you're sending something, you can send it in the form of a link to redeem. And the other side will, by knowing, the specific link, can join and redeem. The whole UX is really, really nice. It's made by the guys at another blockchain ecosystem, but they're using Groth 16 zero-knowledge proofs, really pushing it, but still it works. So it's kind of a pet project, but we're going to try to explore if this is something that we can squeeze in to the Zcash ecosystem. The UX is just amazing. You get a link, and then you log in with your whatever super centralized identity well, one of them. But then that's it, and you're onboarded. You have your tokens. You can move them around, and everything is fully private, fully just protected. The only thing is that identity provider can steal all your funds. So
yeah, that's a big downside. I was going to raise this.
I'm saying this as long as you know that this is not for your millions for retirement, but this is for, you know, casual sending, and you're trusting a Google for 20 minutes, then it's fine.
I mean, why not just use PayPal or Venmo or something if you're going to rely completely on a centralized provider? So if I understand correctly, so if the provider can steal your funds, then what privacy are you getting from the provider? None, right?
No, this is I mean, again, you can we can dive into it, but when you're logging in, you can you're getting signatures from that provider, and if you have funds under that identity, then they can generate the transactions to move, and yeah, they can see like what are the funds. They're basically you. But the point is,
can't you get the same or better even usability improvements from something like liberated payments without the centralized identity piece? So you have to have a secure, a private authenticated channel to the payee. But apart from that, that can be Signal, that can be bootstrapped in any way you would like.
I think I haven't seen so far. I haven't seen something that was as easy to use as that particular demo, and I'm probably
I see that as a challenge.
Yeah, I'm probably just you know, struck by the easiness to the point of not, you know, realizing huge gaps, but we're going to be verifying this thoroughly, like figuring out what exactly are the trade-offs, and maybe there's small things that can bridge some of those trade-offs and get, you know, the best of all worlds.
It's the old usability versus privacy conundrum, unfortunately. Chris, do you want to say something?
Yeah, well, I think that focusing on usability in that fashion is actually really important. There is something of an open question, though, with that, which is, even if the onboarding is easy, why would people want to use it for Zcash, or, you know, why do people want to use Zcash specifically? And I think that that's a question that we as a community need to, you know, that's not necessarily a technical road ahead, but that I think is the biggest challenge. Is so I guess the question I'd like to put to the panel is, what ideas do you have, not for how can we improve the protocol, but what kind of applications can you imagine building on the protocol as it stands today, or in the future with ZSAs, with some of the changes that we're talking about for the near term, that where the applications are really relevant to some sort of market?
I mean, it's a bit difficult without smart contracts, right? So if we can do smart contracts, then we can basically do anything that Ethereum can do.
I think we're exactly at that long-term conversation, because everybody realizes that in Zcash, smart contracts are like it's not NU6, it's not NU7. I don't know if it's a single-digit NU, but like I hope.
Yeah, maybe NU10. Realistically.
And it doesn't have to be this way. this is a point I really want to make. When ZSAs are enabled, they can be their own little haven of chaos, where you can add things that, you know, maybe that that particular asset will crash and burn, but you can kind of isolate the economic impact of what you're doing, or at least try to do that. So we might end up in a few NUs in a place where you can try to innovate and progress faster in these little islands of assets that are just for those experiments.
Chris.
All right, I have one sort of speculative thing that is essentially ZSA related, which is we've talked about in the past, you know, this notion of, you know, wrapped BTC on Zcash and whatnot. One thing that I've always wondered about is chain merges, right? How could one bring disparate blockchains back together? So maybe I don't know. This is a far out idea, but what if a ZSA could be, you know, this would probably require some sort of smart contract functionality, but a ZSA could be created. It would also require full node functionality, such that the full nodes validate also, say, the Bitcoin blockchain and respect burns on the Bitcoin chain as transfers into or mints of a ZSA backed or a ZSA shielded Bitcoin.
I mean, we've seen mergers, right? Because the merge of the sort of Ethereum main chain onto the proof of stake chain in Ethereum 2.0 is a merge. From a technical point of view, it's, I mean, I'm not sure of all the details, but I think basically it's solving all the same engineering problems. I think it comes back to, if you want Zcash consensus to be dependent on the, even if only weakly dependent on the consensus for another chain, then yes, to John's point, you need to isolate that, to isolate the economic consequences of that to a particular token. Otherwise, it's just, it's too much of a risk. And even if you do that, then you either pay a lot of complexity by putting it in the base protocol, or you need smart contracts in order to do it. So basically, I think that we need recursion, because recursion unlocks scalability improvements. It also unlocks programmability, because now you can have a fixed size circuit for the recursive verifier, and that can verify your tree of computation, which can be as large as you like, or directed graph of computation. And so I really regret that we did not prioritize enabling recursion in Halo 2, because I mean, we didn't have the engineering capacity to do that along with everything else that we were doing. But if we had, it would unlock so much functionality and so much sort of potential for the protocol. And now sort of other proof systems have kind of caught up to what Halo could have done if it had been developed along those lines, using some of the same ideas, I would say.
Arya.
In terms of use cases for the next 5 to 10 years, I would really love to see capital markets reflected in ZSAs on the Zcash chain. I think that's probably going to be very useful for everyone.
But by the way, if we want to switch to a fully post-quantum Zcash, that means changing the proof system anyway. So we should definitely, if we do that, recursion should be one of the sort of necessary criteria which we choose for which system we move to.
So I have actually answers or thoughts about both your points. For the capital market, the very first thing that we're doing with ZSAs is adding asset swaps. It's not like the full-blown market, but it's the first thing you do when you're talking about a market. So this is work that's been designed. It's going to take a little bit of a delay because of the work on Zebra that we're now putting earlier, but it's right around the corner. And then regarding the recursion and like what could have we done with a nice verifier that can do recursion? There's actually a really interesting conversation going on is there one nice standard verifier that we can, as a community, focus all our efforts and demonstrate that it's secure, potentially formally verified. This is an effort that a lot of people in this community are also involved in, and I think that we can have our wish list on what this ideal trusted verified verifier, blessed verifier, I don't know how to call it, but we can pour ideas into what goes into it. But I think, yes, now we know that some form of recursion is probably useful for that. But I think by now it's been the recursion has been demonstrated in many forms and many combinations. So we're able to choose from several schemes. So
yes, I'll steal your thunder. Come to ZK Proof 6.
I didn't say it.
No, I said it for you.
Thanks.
I'll be there.
ZK Proof 6 on May 22nd. But that's where basically this is being discussed and selected. Like, what's the what is that verifier that we should focus our efforts on? Among many other things, we talked about two-way pegging with Bitcoin. There's going to be the BitVM people there that are, if we ever verify Bitcoin, somehow it's going to be some form of BitVM. Anyway, I see like a future in Zcash where it's central, the continuation of unbroken promise of privacy and progress towards more and more features. It focuses a lot of the community, so it's a leading project in this space.
Thank you, John. You answered.
No compromises. No compromises between security and usability.
Yeah, so John answered my final question for everyone to wrap up. We have less than a minute, and it's to everyone. Where do you see Zcash in the next 25 years? I'm going to pick on Arya first.
I see Zcash as a main payment method, similar to credit cards right now, representing capital markets. That's about it for me.
Chris?
I see Zcash as a foundation for applications that people use to collaborate with one another and that can have economic components. having a distributed economic substrate is foundational to all kinds of organizational structures and new possibilities in the way that that people can interact.
John, did you want to add anything to what you said before?
I'm in listening mode.
Yeah, I call that an open economic computation. I've recently sort of coined that, and I'm happy with it because it's a distributed computation and that anyone can join, and it has economic consequences because people agree that it should.
Finally, to finish us off, Conrado, where do you see Zcash in the next 25 years?
Yeah, my view is similar to Aria's. I think I love to see Zcash like a very easy, accessible private payment solution. But yeah, hopefully that will take much less than 2 years.
Great.
We won't be alongside credit cards. We'll have replaced credit cards.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone, for this marathon of a panel. Please, to my panelists, I would say, please check the app. There's some few questions we've not answered, so I encourage them to go and answer those. And we will end things there because I think we're over time. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. Bye.
Thank you.